What's going on, everybody? Hope you're having a good day as always. So yesterday I finished this book, Millionaire Next Door. A while back on my channel I said I was going to read this, and it just took me a while to get to it, especially with the vacation that I went on. But I just want to share some of the insights that I learned from this book. Hopefully encourage you guys in your path to financial freedom and financial independence and all of your financial goals, because there are some things that you can learn from this book. If you are interested in picking up a copy, there's a link down below. But before I really get started on this book, one thing that I wanted to say. I helped move my little brother into college yesterday. He's going to Texas State University. So if anyone wants to wish him some good luck or has any advice for a incoming college freshman, definitely comment down below. But getting back to this book and what it talks about, you know, we all have like a preconceived notion of what a millionaire is, right? And side note, this book was written in the 90s, so you know, a millionaire back then is worth even more than today's millionaire. But still, the idea of a millionaire carries so much weight in our society, right? And so, you know, what does it take to become a millionaire? What do they look like? How can you become a millionaire? You know, it seems so outlandish to feel like, oh yeah, one day I could be a millionaire. Even though we're all sold that dream that, hey, you can do whatever you want, you can become whatever you want to be, you can do whatever you want to do. If we're honest with ourselves, it may not honestly feel like that all the time, you know, unless you're just blessed with like insane looks or athletic ability or some amazing talent. It may not feel like, oh, one day I can go become a millionaire, or at least that's my thought anyways. But what this book does is kind of tackle those preconceived notions and explain to you, look, this is what millionaires actually look like. This is what the majority of them do. This is kind of how they became millionaires, and it's actually a lot more easy than you would think. There's just a few basic, you know, practices that most millionaires follow, and so let's talk about those real quick. First, let's talk about what kind of work they do, right? When this book was written, it said that less than 20% of Americans are self-employed, yet self-employed people make up 60% of millionaires. Now, when I say self-employed, I'm not implying that, you know, they're all doctors and lawyers and they have their own practices and things like that. Oftentimes it was they own their own plumbing company, or they're a contractor, or they're a real estate agent, they're an accountant. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be something glamorous, but the fact is that more self-employed people make up the millionaire population than do employed people from other companies. So I thought that was an interesting thing to note. It also said that 97% of millionaires were homeowners, and that's not really a big surprise. But what is a surprise is that of those people, 50%, right, half of those people have lived in the same exact house for over 20 years. Now, one thing that I kind of take from this is that more than likely, most of the millionaires are probably older, right? I think they said the average was like 57 years old. So at 57, there's a good chance that you found your long-term house a while ago. But still, they're millionaires. They've worked their entire lives to become that, and they've lived in the same house for 20 years. So this idea that, you know, if you're wealthy, you naturally have to, you know, have the nicest things and always be upgrading isn't necessarily true. Next, and this should also not be any surprise, is that they are serious investors, okay? And it's not that they, you know, invest in any one thing specifically. It's the fact that they're motivated and devoted to investing and to watching their assets and capital grow. It says on average at least 20% of their annual realized income is invested. So if you've started your own Wealthfront account, or you use Betterment or some other investing service, ask yourself, look, how much of my income do I contribute towards my investments each year? And if you're on the lower side, maybe consider stepping it up a little bit. Next, they actually live well below their means. I've made a video on this before, and it's something that my dad told me when I was really young, but live below your means. Again, this kind of goes back to the house thing, and we're going to talk about more aspects of this and later on in this video. But guys, like, just because you make a lot of money doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money, right? I recently did an interview and we were talking about this, but you know, the perception is that, oh, you're a millionaire, therefore you could afford to buy such and such, right? A nice car, a nice house, nice clothes, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, they may be millionaires because they don't buy that stuff, right? Maybe they're not millionaires because they make crazy money. Maybe it's just because they're really frugal and intelligent with what they spend their money on. Next, what I did find interesting is that they all pretty much just use one credit card. Now maybe that's not that interesting, but in a world today where most people have like a department store card and a home improvement store card, a clothing store card, a furniture card, a 0% interest for this many months card, that everyone has all different cards for different things. Millionaires pretty much use one. That's it. Right? I try to use only one card, and that's my travel rewards credit card. So I'm not a millionaire, but at least I've got that right. Next, what I want to talk about is why having a high income each year doesn't guarantee you wealth. And it has to do with what we were talking about earlier as far as like living below your means and being frugal. I also want to address the fact that you don't need to be some, insane professional career person to achieve high levels of wealth, right? And sometimes how it could almost be a hindrance. So here's what the book shares as an example, right? Let's say you've got someone, let's call him Joe the plumber, right? Joe the plumber lives in, average neighborhood, nothing fancy, doesn't drive a fancy car, but, his business is on point. His business is always run well. He's always drumming up new business. He's got a lot of success in his field, right? He's a plumber or a contractor, whatever it may be. Right? The idea is that he's just a blue-collar worker, he owns his company, and that's what he does. Right? Let's say he makes $100,000 a year. Now, let's say you've got someone else, right? I wrote down Kenneth the attorney, or Kenneth the lawyer, let's say. Right? He makes a lot more money. Let's say $400,000 a year. Well, why is it that potentially Joe the plumber, contractor, whatever he may be, has far more wealth than Kenneth the high-powered lawyer? Right? Well, the reason is that sometimes living a certain lifestyle prevents you from accumulating wealth. Whereas Joe is totally fine living in just an average typical neighborhood, driving a normal car, and everyone knows that he's a plumber, contractor, whatever it may be, society actually does not have the same expectations that they place on Kenneth. Right? So he's allowed to live in just a normal house. He's allowed to drive just a normal car. He doesn't need to wear nice clothes, right? That's what we expect out of him. And because of that, and he's comfortable living that life, he's accumulated a lot of wealth, right? His requirements are low, so he can save money and focus on growing. Whereas this Kenneth, the lawyer person, we expect lawyers to be well-dressed, drive a nice car, go to fancy dinners, be, buddy buddies with people at the country club. Like, the requirement of their lifestyle is so much more than that of just the average blue-collar worker. So even though he makes so much money, the amount of money he has to spend to keep up that lifestyle is so much that it prevents him from achieving high levels of wealth. In the book, they call this prodigious accumulators of wealth versus under accumulators of wealth. Meaning that, yes, if you make so much money, you should logically be more wealthy than someone who makes less money. Yet that's not always the case. Next, I want to talk about the issues of houses, right? Buying a house. I don't want to talk about this too much because it wasn't an integral part of the book, but one thing that I noticed and wanted to share with you guys because you might be considering buying a house, and I shared my rental property recently, but their rule of thumb was that if you are interested in becoming wealthy and you're not wealthy yet, when it comes to buying a house, never buy a house that is more than twice your household's total annual realized income, right? Simply put, if you're married or you're single, take your total income, your total realized annual income, multiply it by 2, and you should never have a mortgage higher than that dollar amount. Okay, so if you're looking at a house that's more expensive than that, then you better be coming in with a down payment, or expect to not necessarily build high levels of wealth because you're buying a house that's more expensive than you can realistically afford. Next, kind of in the same category, let's talk about cars, right? They were talking about how a lot of people that achieve high levels of income constantly buy nice luxury vehicles, right? And again, that's kind of what we would expect from high income people, right? They use an example of someone that, every 2 years they're buying a new vehicle, right? And this guy researched, I think they used a Porsche as an example, but he researched all the Porsches. He researched all the dealers in the area. He spent so much time figuring out, how do I get the best deal? I want to make sure that I use my money the right way, right? So where maybe he spent $85,000 on a Porsche that costs I don't know, $95,000, right? He saved himself $10,000, right? But at the end of the day, he still lost $85,000 for this vehicle that is probably going to do nothing but depreciate in value. Whereas they use the example of, someone that doesn't earn as much money but is actually far wealthier than this high income person. He bought a vehicle, let's say every 8 years, right? And when he did buy a vehicle, he just bought, some $30,000 car. Well, because of that, because he's not upgrading cars every couple years, he's not buying the nicest vehicle he can afford to purchase. He has so much extra money to invest. He has so much extra time to learn how to grow those investments. So the point of the whole story is that, again, being frugal, being efficient with your money is going to be a big indicator of how wealthy you become, not just how much money do you make in a year. Lastly, I thought this was very interesting, how wealthy people handle their wealth with their children. Okay, even the millionaires that they use in their books as examples, they were talking about the lifestyle they wanted to live for their children, to ensure that they have a good future. And you would think, okay, well, if you want your children to have a good future, do everything that you can. Buy them the nicest clothes, send them on vacation all the time, send them to private school, buy their house, like all this other stuff that we would assume rich people would do. And it's not to say that rich people don't do this, but a lot of the truly wealthy people don't, right? They don't want their kids to think that, money grows on trees, I'll be here to support you forever, right? They don't want to instill that needy or dependent mentality, right? Because they showed that, if you constantly give your children whatever they want throughout the rest of their life, they're always going to look to you to provide them resources. Again, whether it's cars, house, clothes, tuition, whatever it may be, right? So model the lifestyle you want your kids to have as an adult while they're children, right? So if you're wealthy or you're on the track to try to become wealthy, live below your means. Show kids that you don't always get what you want, and you don't necessarily need to buy everything that you want. Focus on the needs in life. Focus on using your resources efficiently. Prove to them that the value of $1 and hard work, and that is actually going to determine whether or not they're successful in life. Now, I'm not a parent, and I'd like to be one day, but this is something that I almost not have a hard time with, but if I were in this situation, it would be hard not to want to spoil the child that you have. But again, we call it spoil for a reason, right? It may not necessarily be a good thing, but I found that interesting. And overall, I thought the entire book was a good read. It was much more detail-oriented than Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I reviewed earlier this year. But overall, a lot of good insights, lots of things that dispel the fact that millionaires are this rare, exotic, hyper-intelligent group of people. It's not, all right? There are those people in there, but that's not everyone. Right? So regardless if you want to be a millionaire or not, great financial advice in this book. If you do want to pick it up, again, I've got a link on Amazon down below. Also, guys, I've got a Half Price Books gift card that I need to use. So comment down below if you have any book recommendations. And it doesn't have to be finance. I love reading, so maybe it's your favorite book of all time, but definitely let me know down below. But that's what I want to talk about today. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, check out my Patreon page. But take care. I'll see y'all next time.
Hey guys, thanks again for watching this video. I hope you learned something new from it and you were able to strengthen your financial position. I'm going to keep coming out with more videos, so please stay tuned. But go ahead and like, subscribe, comment, and have a good day.